All right, so we are back after a long delay with keeping it local, and I am here with Alli Keib from Keib Capital, another Kings Parker who has made it big in the capital region. What's up, Alli? How you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Doing all right. We're here on a Monday night, and we were talking all things real estate before the camera went on because obviously I can't help myself. Um, but I've been wanting to reach out to you once I put together Alli and Keib Capital on Instagram. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. I know her. I got to talk to her.
Yes, two and two. Yes.
Oh man, it's so hard for me to do that. So I'm glad I did. But yeah, so you have such an interesting story, and I want to hear all about it. So, start by just giving us a rundown about what Keib Capital is.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Thanks for having me. So, Keib Capital is it's a real estate investment company that I started back in 2018, and the business, like the company, was really born out of a desire to build a career around a more flexible life. I started having kids, had my daughter, and I quickly realized that the sort of typical 9 to 5 type job that I was accustomed to just wasn't going to allow me, to be the sort of present mom that I knew that I wanted. I knew I still wanted to work. I wanted to continue to contribute to the financial success of my family, but I wanted to do it in sort of a more flexible way. So I was really craving a lifestyle, and I kind of stumbled upon real estate investing. I just read a bunch of books, listened to some podcasts, and I said, I'm just going to buy a duplex and sort of see what happens. Um, I thought maybe it would just be a sort of a side hobby. And I kind of like to joke the last 5 or 6 years or so, I've just been accumulating, babies and buildings. so I, so at this point, I can say very emphatically, I am done having kids, so no more babies, but I want to sort of ramp up the building buying. And so Keib Capital, like I said, sort of organically grew out of a desire to have some flexibility in my life, some more work-life balance, and here we are.
That's so. First of all, babies and buildings needs to be tagged somewhere and trademarked and just done. So if I had a guy here that was doing stuff like a producer, I'd be like, get on it,
Yeah,
because that's
exactly.
hilarious. Sorry for mispronouncing the name, by the way.
Oh, that's
Um,
okay. Oh, I get that like all day, so you're good.
and so I guess the first question I have to ask is because it's from what I've seen from real estate investing, it can be very demanding. So does it give you the flexibility that you were looking for?
Absolutely. I oftentimes think about, people think about passive income sometimes, and I think the wrong way. They have this vision of like a landlord laying on the beach, sipping a cocktail and watching, money just like fly into their bank accounts, right? It's not really that passive, right? If anyone's doing it the right way, it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
But what I would say when I think about passive income, I think about not, you're not trading time for money, right? So you just have a little bit more control over your time. And so that's sort of what I think about, which is like, you're trading time for money in any type of salaried or hourly type of job, right? And I read like a bunch of articles where the happiest people wake up and they have control over their day, control over their time, right? And so passive income for me, being a real estate investor, being an entrepreneur, that's what that really means. And so I do have flexibility because I can control my day. Yes, I have to work, I have a lot going on, but I can be at the bus stop and get the kids from school. And I made cookies with my son at 3 o'clock p.m. today, right? So that's sort of what I mean by the flexibility, because I'm my own boss. And I guess any really entrepreneur can sort of say that, but real estate investing really just sort of fit into my life in a really great way. So
I'm so glad that you said that too, because I think most people have that vision of just like you said, like laying on the beach, money flying into your bank account, like another cocktail. And
yeah, it's not passive like that, right? Like I mean, if you're doing it the right way, like I said, I'm constantly upgrading my properties, putting money into my properties, right? Improving them, constant communication with the tenants, right? It's a lot of work. Even if you have a third party property manager, you're still managing the manager. It's still not passive. You're still not on the beach like that, right? I mean, one day, that's probably the ultimate goal, but you're still managing the manager. You're managing your asset. Yes, somebody's doing the day to day, but you're still very on top of everything. So, when I think about passive income and flexibility, it's really, like I said, it's just about control over your own time, and you're not, you're not working for an employer, which has been a really game changing thing for me.
Mm. And yeah, like you said, you're not, when you're dealing with properties, there's so many moving pieces because you're dealing with the people in them, you're dealing with the condition of the property, you're dealing with all of the tax avenues that you have, like with depreciation and everything that you could do. So there's constant management of multiple things going on at once, that do make it time consuming and that make it very important for you to stay on top of it, because these are like the building blocks of crazy wealth, but at the same time, they can rot very quickly if you're not on top of it, making sure that you're following through with everything you need to do to maintain them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, after I accumulated enough properties, there are a lot of tools that you can put into place to sort of make sure you keep on top of all those things. So there's softwares, that are designed specifically for that, so that you can really kind of stay on top of all these, all the vacancies, all the rent increases, everything that you need to know from a tenant perspective, a maintenance issue perspective, everything's sort of in one like organized place. And that's been really helpful for me.
Okay. A question that I did not have written down, but since we went on to this topic, have
Yeah.
you seen or started implementing, or see a pathway for any use of like AI to help you with managing your properties and your tenants and stuff?
I haven't used AI yet necessarily. That's probably the next step. Although a lot of these softwares are, embedding some of the AI technology into their software and into their apps. But I do use a lot of technology, and have really tried to systematize my business. So, for example, I don't do self showings, right? So, like, there was a point in my business where um, I remember my first showing. I set up a large rectangular table and a folding chair, and I literally sat there for like 4 hours. And I had scheduled showings.
Mm.
Half of them were no shows, and I just said to myself, "This is just a time suck," right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of passive, that's the opposite of passive, right? And I remember being like, "This is really fun" for like the first time, and that got old really quickly, like
Yeah. Yeah.
so quickly. And so there's software called there's technology called Tenant Turner. This is just one example of actually a multitude of different softwares like this. But basically, it's you put a lockbox on the door, and it's all right. The tenants can come in. You list the apartment a certain way. They fill out a certain amount of information, upload their ID, and then they get a code, and then they do and is there some risk involved there? Are people going to, is there risk of a female going into an apartment by herself with a stranger? There's risk in everything, right? So
Yeah.
I take that risk, and it's a huge time saver for me. So there are a lot of things like that I implement. AI, not as much yet, but I think it's just around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I mean, I feel like every app that I open, every tool that I have for real estate now, the AI is being integrated into there.
Yeah,
Which, for some, I don't really mind it. I'm always interested to see where it's going,
yeah, me
and
too.
what its capabilities are. Yeah, because,
Totally.
I'm down with anything that makes life easier. Um,
Yes.
but now, so speaking of making life easier, you're before you were in the entrepreneurial, um owning rental property world,
Yep.
how did your previous work kind of prepare you for what you're doing now, or did it not have anything to do with what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, no, I think my experience in the corporate world has made me the entrepreneur that I am. I mean, I think, you know, I spent the better part of a decade working in New York City in the financial services industry, and I learned a ton of transferable skills. I mean, time management. I learned people management, right? Managing up, managing down, everything about systems, about processes. And I find that when I work today with people with a corporate background, there's a difference, right? So I actually feel like it really equipped me for the work that I'm doing now. Um, and so much so that I think about that sometimes, even though I want to teach my kids everything there is to know about being a real estate investor, entrepreneur, right? This path that I'm on, I really will encourage them to spend their 20s working in the corporate world. I do feel like there are enough skills that are important, that are critical, that you learn in that type of environment working for an employer. Even all the things that we just said about why working for yourself is better and makes for a more flexible life. Sure, when you're a little bit later in life, but when you're just starting out, I do feel like it's really important. So I learned a lot, and I actually loved my time in corporate America. I wouldn't change it. And like I said, it really has taught me a lot and has enabled me to be, I think, the entrepreneur that I am. So
That's really cool. I think what I'm hearing, which is one of the most important things that, because I was never like really like a business mind, um and teaching kind of help with this too, but I'm sure you got it on steroids in the corporate world, is the systems and the processes, because
mhm.
those are gigantic companies that have created systems and processes for every single level that they're dealing with in order to funnel ultimately profits to the top. So in order to learn how to do those the best possible way, I mean, you're gonna like I just heard it the other day, like R&D, rip off and duplicate. Like
Yep, yep.
right from there, the things that they're doing, because they've perfected that in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. And even, like you said, you listen to a lot of podcasts, so do I. And it sounds like the first mistake that most like real estate investors make when they haven't had any of that experience is they don't have the systems, and they're like, once I got my systems down and my processes down, it was like, okay, we're on fire here and we're ready to go. Let's move. But
Yeah.
until you learn how to do that, it's a hard thing to do, to get the system down. And if your mind doesn't work like that and you have to train yourself, that's a whole nother learning experience that you have to go through.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there was a book. I think it's the ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy, if I'm just
Mhm.
recalling that correctly. And one of the things he said was the biggest mistake you can make as a landlord is make exceptions to tenants, right? And so you're just mentioning systems, so I'm thinking about that, right? To be systematic is so important, right? Because it's really easy to have relationships with tenants. Okay, no late fee this time, fine. And things start breaking down, right? Because like if you do that one time and then you sort of forget what you let go and what you didn't. So I try really hard to just say, this is our system, this is our process, it is what it is. And I kind of learned that the hard way. So that's sort of how I try and handle it now. But yeah.
That's so you set a standard. Once you set a standard
Yeah.
and that standard or that trust is broken, I mean, that's it. Like, and
Yeah.
this happens all the time. With real estate, it happens with teaching, like it's nonstop. Um, but just to think about like all the things that could go wrong in any type of transaction. Now, like you're
Right.
owning these buildings, you got these tenants coming in there. Yeah, you can't start making exceptions for people when you've listed out your standards already, because like you said, if things start breaking down, that is not just like loss of rent. There's so much other negative things that could happen and spiral out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes the emotion out of it, right? You're like, this is how it is. This is, and so uh and it's just much harder for them to sort of see a problem with that if you're just very assertive and say, this is the process. This is how our company works, So
I'm sure it commands respect right away. Like you're just like, boom, you want to rent here, here's how it works. And if you
yeah,
don't follow it, see you later.
exactly. It does. Yeah, you're right.
It's great. I mean, that's you're just setting a standard, and I think that's great because it's going to command respect instantly.
Yeah.
Um, but now tell me, because I love that this is on your website, and this was one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you. Is the fact that you are a completely woman-owned
Hmm.
real estate investment company. Just tell me a little bit about um the trials and tribulations of that, like how that came to be, like why that became the focus, because I'm very interested.
Yeah, it's a really important question. So thanks for asking it. Real estate investing is a very male dominated industry. And I think that there are benefits and drawbacks to being a woman in this space. I like to think that there are more benefits than drawbacks, but there are still a lot of assumptions and stereotypes in the industry that we have to, as a society, continue to sort of reject and break down. A quick story: yeah, not too long ago, I went to look at an apartment building with a broker I was working with at the time, and we were meeting the seller at the building and the seller's broker. I was the last to arrive, so I pulled up, parked, and I got out of my car and I approached the three gentlemen. And the seller's broker, stepped forward and introduced himself, and then he said, "So, who else are we waiting for?" And it's the other two, it didn't phase the other two whatsoever, but I immediately knew what happened, which was that this was not a malicious thing. It was a subconscious assumption that he made that this girl in front of him couldn't possibly be, the sole individual there ready to potentially buy this large building behind him, which is exactly what I was there to do. But and listen, I don't get offended by these things, but I just asserted myself. We moved on, but it's extremely eye opening, right? I oftentimes get, anytime I'm with a male agent or a male broker and we're going to look at a property, whoever's showing the building immediately thinks that I am the agent and this man is the buyer. So I have to quickly, make that distinction. I've gotten mistaken for tenants before in my own buildings. So, I'm walking around, people think I'm the tenant, right? So, like I said, assumptions, stereotypes, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But the way I like to look at it is you can think of it like I'm a woman in this, I don't know, sea of male investors, and yikes, how intimidating. Or I'm a woman in this sea of male investors. How cool, how rare. That makes me memorable, right? And so I did listen to a podcast about that, and a really large, successful female investor was talking about this, and it really did resonate with me because I've had local lenders tell me how refreshing to work with a woman, female, local business owner, this investor. Like all we do is work with men. So great. I've had sellers tell me, I'm not ready to, divest my portfolio yet, but when I am, like, I want to work with you. I'm bringing my properties to you. Like, I think what people don't sometimes think about is like real estate investing is a relationship business, right? Like, so, and women are really good at relationships. We have these like soft skills, right? So yes, I can talk about all the metrics in the spreadsheets, but I choose not to lead with that.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me. So I think it's actually given me quite a leg up. And I hope that I kind of rub off on some women that are like on the sidelines that I talk to about real estate investing, because it is an awesome career. And I'd hate for anyone to feel intimidated because we are a minority.
Well, yeah, there's so much going on here. My
Exactly.
brain was going like as you were talking.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to like, I'm actively listening, but it's like, wait, which point do I want to touch on first? So like, I think what you said is so true. Just hearing, like, I've done cold calling, I've listened to it. I would like, for my real estate business, when I have someone dialing, I want a a female voice on the line, because the conversation is so much more just genuine, and there's just an automatic, like you said, there's an innate ability to connect with the seller. Whereas like
Mhm.
I've heard, like myself included, get on the phone and it's like, I just want to get to the point. Like, let's get there, let's get to numbers, let's talk, like you said. And there's something so disarming about having a conversation. And I just feel like that in general, like there's so many bad people
Yeah.
in this space too. Like, let's be honest, like there are so many people who are just absolute snakes. They're not out to do right by anybody. They are only out to do right by themselves. They don't care about anybody involved. And that's a shame. And that's not just real estate investing. That's like every business.
Yeah.
It's just, that's just people. That's the way people are. But I feel like I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that the majority of the worst ones out there are probably men who are trying to take advantage. Whereas with less females in the field, I'm guessing that there's going to be less bad females in the field. I mean, that's just a numbers game too. But overall, I would rather do business. And as a real estate agent, I do a lot of business because most real estate agents are women. There's a lot more women real estate agents on Long
Yes.
Island than there are men. And I've never been yelled at or mistreated or told or like big dogged or anything by another female agent. I've always been treated respectfully. We've
Right.
always, like, when we've gotten a deal done, it's always been like, oh, it was so nice to work with you. It was so nice to work with, like, I've never had an issue of someone trying to pull a fast one or mistreat me or mistreat the or anything with any of the female agents I've dealt with. And I've dealt with way more female agents than men. So that's like the flip side of it,
Yeah.
where it's so different. And there's, like I said, there's so much going on here. My brain's going in a million different directions. So I'm not articulating this in the best way
No,
possible.
I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Like there needs to be more. I think there needs to be a larger female presence in a lot of areas. Like
Yeah,
just as more of a calming presence. And people, so there's also a stereotype of women being more emotional, and I find that in these things, in these types of business dealings and everything, like women are far less emotional about this stuff. Like the female agents that I've dealt with, far less emotional. They don't get like crazy and angry about stuff,
yeah.
because let's not forget, anger is an emotion. And like
hmm
there tends to be a lot of male anger machismo that starts coming out when
The
you're in a,
the ego, right? It's like there's a lot more
yeah,
of that,
like,
right? Yeah,
and that's an emotion too. And it's like,
yeah,
emotions aren't just crying. I've never had again, a female agent get emotional in any way with me on the phone in any type of deal,
yeah.
because they're just like even keeled, like let's get the results, let's not worry about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do think like the machismo thing is really true. Like, because some of the sellers like are also like the bigger the building, right? Like the more sophisticated sometimes these guys are. And so sometimes they have egos too. So you've got someone trying to buy the building with like coming in with talking, numbers and metrics and ego. And then you've got someone like immediately on the defensive because they're like, dude, okay. Right. And so it's like all of a sudden it's this sort of like rub. Whereas like someone else can come in and say, tell me about your property. How long have you owned? Like, and it's like just a genuine, like, I like to ask a lot of questions, right? Like learn about them.
Mhm.
Um, it's kind of like 101 stuff, but it's kind of amazing how not everybody, kind of massages the relationship that way. And they do it, in not the best way. And so it's a differentiator for sure, being a woman. And I like I said, I do think that there's more advantages than the disadvantages.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm not in the space that you are as far as like
Yeah,
commercial buildings and everything. Like commercial kind of terrifies me. Um,
yeah.
which I think it does a lot of residentially. I mean, you're technically like you're making commercial buys, right? Even though these are, um,
Yeah,
I
yeah. So like it's all like terminology. So commercial, I'm not doing necessarily like commercial meaning like retail space, but
right,
anytime you're over 4 units from a bank perspective, it's commercial lending. Yeah, and it's they're considered commercial.
hmm,
So even though they're residential because people are living there in apartments, they're commercial buildings. Yeah.
right. And just going back to what you said too, like ultimately with these deals, it's all just math, right?
All just men like selling them.
No, all just math. It's all
Oh,
math in the end.
math.
Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing about, not getting too emotional, right? Like, but that is what I really like about the larger buildings. So I started buying, two, three, four families, right? Because that's just how a lot of people get started. But at the end of the day, and you know this well, right? Like, uh, you, you got to look at the comps in the neighborhood, right? Because those are considered residential. So,
right.
it's almost like it doesn't matter how nice you make your apartments, right? Like if the properties next door are kind of dumps or whatever, right? Like you're at the mercy of the market. As you get into the larger commercial buildings, um, properties are valued based on like the NOI, right? And income minus expenses. It's not rocket science, but you can implement things and you can improve the property. It's called forced depreciation. You upgrade your properties, you increase the income, you increase the revenue, you increase that NOI, and suddenly you do the math again, and your property is worth way more than you bought it for.
Hmm.
And you can either refi, pull out money, or sell it, or whatever, right? So you have control over what your property is valued at. Whereas, like I said, the smaller apartment buildings, 2 3 unit buildings, it's you're really at the mercy of the market. So that's one of the main reasons I really like the larger buildings, because I'm spending all this time and money, right, upgrading my apartments. I want to know, what is that going to get me? What is that? This is it's helping the community, of course. You're improving property in the area that you love and invest, but
Hmm.
you're also, right, you're improving your property, you're increasing the value of your asset. So,
Right. Yeah, and which is, like you said, to maintain your portfolio, that stuff has to be done constantly.
right. Yeah.
This we're kind of started to tap into this a little bit, so I wanted to ask you because it's a hot topic around here. I know you're from Kings Park originally. Um, I know if you remember the shortstop parking lot
Yes.
there. And so where they put a Mexican restaurant in there, like off to the side, they're knocking that down. They're building like a 4 unit, not a 4 unit, sorry, a 40 unit
Oh,
apartment building, 4 stories, so 10 units
okay.
total. And it's designed to be uh, a transit oriented building because it's right there with the train station, close to downtown. Downtown's getting a revitalization now. In order to access the state grants, um, like or some of the state money that they give to, or it's state tax breaks, I guess it is. Yeah, it's the grants. In order to access some of the grant money, a certain amount of the building, 10% has to be affordable or workforce housing. Um, so a lot of residents are, there's a lot of talk on Facebook and all these things like of what it's going to be and misconceptions and everything. So do you have any experience with this? And can you talk at all or speak to what it's like to have in a building with having affordable housing in it? Or I don't know if you do with any of
I
your.
don't have any affordable housing
Okay.
buildings. I really have no experience in that area. I mean, I know some investors that do, but it's not so much up here, really. You don't
Okay.
really, that isn't so prevalent where I am. I there are talks of it. It might, come, but right now it's not. I don't really, I don't hear of that much, and I don't have experience with the affordable housing stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, Shucks, I was hoping you'd have some insight there.
I
Um,
know. Sorry. Yeah.
no, it's okay. Um, I just find it interesting. Because what I try and explain about any type of building that's going to have tenants, right? Like you do have some control as to who's getting into the building, right? Like you
Sure.
have tenant checks. Like what are some of the things um that like you do to verify like your tenants and like who's coming into the building?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think this is the biggest make or break for people coming into this business, right? Like if you have bad tenants, that your life is miserable, everything goes downhill, right? So
Yeah.
and of course you can't necessarily help it when you inherit a building, because you don't get to choose those tenants.
Right.
But when I have a vacant unit, I have pretty strict criteria that I abide by when it comes to screening a new applicant. So, off the top of my head, a few things that I make sure is the combined gross income of the tenant has to equal 3 times the monthly rent. So, if the apartment is $1,000, that person or couple needs to make $3,000, right? And that's just sort of like, bare bones, like it has to happen. Credit score, I like to see 600, but I mean, I just approved someone today who didn't quite have that. Like, to me sometimes, and this goes to the exception thing sometimes, but I do feel like, so credit sticks with you, right? And so when it's like one piece of a much larger puzzle, there are instances where, if I'm calling the employer, verifying income, they make way more than the 3 times, right? And so it's like, and you read the credit report and you see what happened. And there are instances where I'm okay with a little bit lower credit. But and I don't allow any smoking, in the building, or no smokers, right? Because then they'll say, "Oh, I'll smoke outside," but it still smells, and right. And so,
Yeah.
those are just a few things. I do a background check, and I do call previous or current landlords. I want to hear, how were they? Were they neat? Are they clean? Did they pay rent on time? I always do my due diligence in that way. So it's the applications, the paper that comes through. It's like the first piece, but then I do make phone calls and I do verify with employers and previous landlords and things like that. So it's a pretty in-depth process, and I really want to make sure that I kind of know who it is that's going to be living in the building, and I think that's been really important. So
I'm sure it saves you so much time and energy not having to deal with like craziness and issues.
I mean, absolutely. Like the tenants that I've placed myself, like, I mean, 9.5 out of 10. Like, I don't have issues with those people. Of course it happens. Things are inevitable, but yeah, I've gotten pretty good. Like, sometimes it's also like, you're like, okay, this is going to be, you have good instinct, right? And so, yeah, it's a process though, right? And I can't, you don't let things slide. It's got to be pretty strict. So,
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna now tee one up for you.
Okay.
So since we're talking about tenants and everything, and some of them aren't yours, do you have any stories, or what is the craziest thing that you've seen regarding a
Mm,
tenant since you've gotten into this business?
mm. Yeah, it's funny. I think sometimes people, think about the tenant landlord relationship revolving around like toilets and leaky faucets, and like at the end of the day, like these were people like living in your property. So I do a lot of mediating. Like it's very people oriented. But to answer your question, a couple of years ago, I had two transgender tenants living in one of my apartments. They came in literally as with two their birth names and their birth genders, and during the course of their tenancy, they transitioned to the different genders. And I was super, respectful of this. I changed the leases. I needed them to know, like, I totally respect your lifestyle, your
Yeah.
decision, and how you want to live. Like, totally cool with me. Not that they were asking for my, blessing, but I did make it a point to make sure that they were comfortable.
Right.
Um, and one night, so they had a transgender flag outside of their apartment, and one night someone came and burned the flag,
Oh, geez.
and
Oh,
it was really scary because these tenants felt attacked, and I felt like as a landlord I have a responsibility to make my residents feel comfortable. Really sad, but also like really scary from a liability perspective. Someone's like putting fire to my building.
mm-hmm.
So ultimately we got like law enforcement involved, and but that was like probably the scariest sort of situation. The perpetrator was caught. It was a bunch of kids actually, which is pretty sad. But yeah, so that was a scary thing. Like, I mean, things happen all the time. I mean, I could go on and on. Recently, I one of my apartments, um, one of the tenants was leaving the other tenant like love notes. So she'd like go and like walk the dog, and she'd come back to like like a love letter from the other tenant, and like I had to get involved there because she's like, who this, I have like a secret admirer living here, and so stuff happens all the time, and it's not just toilets and leaking faucets. It's like, I can assure you that there's crazy stuff that happens all the time. So
You are your landlord, your mom, your mediator, like.
yeah, yeah, you're like kind of a psychologist, honestly. So
Oh
um
my God, that is so not what people talk about on
oh yeah.
on these things at all. Like, I've never heard any landlord or any investor talking about how they have to mediate between love letters between tenants, which is just absolutely
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. I mean, I saw the notes. She like sent me a picture. She's like, I come back from walking the dog, and this note was like slipped under my door. So funny. But I have to say, like, so in the beginning, like I was getting texted all the time, right? And so I've really, again, talking about processes. So now everything's like through the portal. Like, so, because I don't, of course, like the fire to the flag, I need to know immediately. But there are certain things where it's like, okay, we can wait to talk about that. Like, so I've had to put some parameters around, because otherwise some of these tenants would, really talk to you all day long. So, I had
What
to
are you doing?
set
What are
some
you
down
having for dinner tonight? What's going on?
set some boundaries there, so yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I'll let you start to get going here because I have one more thing that I wanted to touch on with you.
Yeah,
And it was your founding of the Capital Region Real Estate Investing Association.
sure.
So there was nothing before this? Like, you were the first one?
Yeah, so for a couple of years I was running a really informal meetup. Oh, during COVID I had like a
Okay.
informal group. We'd all meet at like a bar. But so the National RIA is like the umbrella nonprofit organization, and there's about 120 local RIA chapters in the country, and there just wasn't one in the capital region. So my colleague and friend Ryan and I decided to start one here, and so we founded it about a year ago, 2022, and our launch night came, and we were like, we don't know if people are gonna come. We don't know if there's a need. And I literally, so many people came. I was like hyperventilating. I had to like go into a coat closet. I was like, I can't believe how many people are here. I have to get up in front of this huge room. Like, so, but that was really exciting because we're like, oh, okay, people really want this.
Yeah.
And it's grown into like this awesome organization. People are thrilled with it. And, we have tons of different types of investors and different local businesses sponsoring the group. We have presenters every single month. And so I think people are getting a lot out of it, which was really awesome.
So what do you do? This is just nuts and bolts question.
Yeah.
Like, what's one of the things you do to, because I found like I've done so many networking events, and sometimes I feel like the format, if it's the same every time or it's similar, they kind of get stale.
Hmm.
And then it's like, okay, it's same people, like we all know each other. You're cool. We'll talk later. Like I'm gonna go home. So what are some of the, because I'm sure
Yeah.
you're doing things to keep it at a high level and keep people interested and engaged and keep people coming there. So what are some of those things?
Yeah, totally. Well, so we it was really important to us to keep some informal networking. So it's sandwiched, right? So like we have like a formal sort of sit down piece in the middle, but it's sandwiched by, two segments of just informal cocktails, talking, networking, because that's really the crux of it. But we, I think the presenters are really what draw different types of crowds. We have presenters of all different aspects of real estate investing. We do a segment every single time on off market deals, which is, I think, some people's favorite part, because, today it's almost like if something's on the MLS, it's like, I honestly don't even look at the MLS
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
garbage. By the time it hits there, I'm like, I don't, it's not going to pencil. Like I just, the deals on the MLS are so, it's really cool. Like people just stand up and say, I've got a 6 unit building and da, 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 it's this much money. Right. And so people are like, and like, people beeline for that guy right after everything splits up. So that's great. And we've gotten a lot of feedback, like direct, deals have happened directly from that portion of the meeting.
That's
Um,
awesome. Like that
yeah,
is awesome.
it's really, that's probably people's favorite. But then so we've got our local businesses, right? So it's like it's not just investors, it's different businesses that work with investors as clients. So you've got your, the attorney standing up and explaining, so if anything's happening from an attorney perspective that he thinks people should know, he can share that. We've got different lenders, we've got, the PPG paint woman from Home Depot, we've got cabinet people, granite people, anyone, people that investors, flippers would want to utilize and use. So it's a win-win, right? Because the sponsors are there in this, get to stand up in front of this captive audience. And so it's like a one-stop shop networking experience is what we like to call it. So the sponsors get up and do their like spiel. And we have the first time guests do an introduction every time. So that's really great because you can sort of get a sense of anyone that's new in the room. And like almost always someone says, hi, I'm so-and-so. And I say to myself, okay, that's who I want to connect with after. Right. So like, that's why we like to have everyone stand up is, oh, that person's new. He owns, 75 units. I want to go talk to him or whatever it is. Right. Um, so I think, and there are, you know, a large handful of new people every single month that come. So we're doing something right. But we did just put a survey out a couple weeks ago because we want to sort of get feedback from people to see like what we could do differently and stuff. But
Yeah. That I love, like, because I mean, I get invites to networking things all the time, and it's like, no offense to my fellow realtors, because so many of you are awesome, but
yeah,
like, I don't need to network. Like, I'm sorry,
a
like,
100%.
like I don't need to network with 100 real estate agents. We're all going after the same stuff, like we're all trying to get the business. So it's the only thing I like right now networking with like other real estate agents is, and again, I know you're not working with agents here, like what you're doing with the deals, like that's so freaking cool because it's like, oh,
Hmm.
we just got deals popping up everywhere. Let's go. Um, but
Yeah,
like if you're just networking with the same people or people from the same industry, it's like, okay, like the only thing I really want to talk to other real estate agents about is their brokerage. Like, what do you think about your brokerage? How do you like your brokerage? Oh, and then I'm like, why don't you come to Signature? Because it sounds way better than what you're doing. Um, but like
yeah,
having that, like you said, like the idea of it being, it's more than just a networking event. It almost is like a trade show that's very niche, like it's specific
exactly.
to the group of people, like obviously real estate investors, but you're providing everything that they need in one night, one moment where it's like, you go there, you get a deal, you could get all the materials you need for your flip. You could probably get the GC that's there, that's looking to get into the business and learn, like you could figure it
That's
all out
that's
in one
totally the
night.
idea. Someone going in and
Oh,
being like, I've got this deal under contract. I need a roofing guy. I need a da, 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 and we're not there yet. Like we need some more sponsors and stuff. We're still growing and stuff, but that is the idea. Exactly what you just said. Um,
that's so awesome.
so yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think like the more experienced investors are there too to like find potential partners, right? Like I don't necessarily need to network every day with like people that don't even own a duplex, even though they're welcome to come. I'm like, oh, that guy could potentially, as I look to scale my business, partnerships become a little bit more vital as you get bigger. And so that's where I am right now in my business, looking for potential partnerships in the area where if there's a larger deal that crosses my desk, I have someone to sort of bring those deals to and talk to about. So that's another piece of it too.
That is so cool. Like I'm trying to think, like already my mind is racing on how I could make this, like apply this to what I do. But I don't know if it lends itself as well as it does to like are all RIA events like this? Is that the format, or did you guys kind of tailor
We
this and make
came
it
up
your
with
own?
that. Yeah. The original partner that I co-founded the group with, he's a property manager and he decided to sort of step down. But I have three, we basically merged another real estate investing group in the area into Korea. And so now we've kind of combined. So I have three other partners. And so we have, those guys have some different ideas. So, which I love because, fresh ideas, fresh, perspectives are really important. But that was us. We decided that the different RIAs have different formats. We're just trying to sort of figure out based on different pieces of feedback we've received what we think people would get the most out of. So that's kind of where we landed.
I love it. I think that's the coolest networking event that I've heard of, because it actually has a function beyond just getting there, saying who you are, maybe meet some people that you like that potentially you do business with. Like there's actually business being done there, which
Yeah, for
doesn't
sure. No,
happen.
I think people have made really great connections and business has been done because of that group. And it's become the largest real estate investing network in the capital region really quickly. Like within the first couple of months, it was that. So we're excited about it.
So clearly you're doing something right with that
Yeah, yeah, it's going
format.
well. Thank you.
All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna let you go, but I could talk to you for 6 hours about this stuff,
Yeah, it was
but
really fun.
I'm not gonna do that to you because I'm tired too, and I'm sure you are with 3 kids, because I only got
Yeah.
2 and I'm exhausted. So,
Yes, yes.
but yeah, listen, it was great catching up with you, and
You too.
I'll put your website in here and everything. I think people are gonna copy your format, honestly, because it's so innovative and different. So
Thank
be ready
you.
for that. You might want to trademark
Okay.
it while you can. There are like I have like 160 subscribers, so someone might be an investor watching this.
I love it.
All right. Thank you again.
Well, thank you so much. It was great seeing you.
You too.